The sky was gray when he reached the cemetery, the kind of cold morning that made the air feel heavy. The man walked slowly along the narrow path, one hand holding a small bouquet of white flowers. People in the city knew him as a millionaire investor, a man who built businesses, created jobs, and lived in a huge house with glass walls and shining floors. But here, in this quiet place, he was simply a father who lost the only person who made him feel human. He stopped in front of a small headstone and placed the flowers gently on the ground. His shoulders tightened, and for a few seconds he tried to stay strong. But the moment his eyes fell on his daughter's name carved in stone, his strength collapsed. His knees bent as he lowered himself onto the grass, his hand trembling as he touched the cold surface. He whispered something only he could hear, a mix of apology, regret, and longing. His daughter had been the center of his life, a quiet girl with bright eyes who loved drawing and used to hug him every morning before school. Losing her had shattered him. Even with all his wealth, he couldn't fix the one thing that mattered. He couldn't bring her back. A soft wind passed through the trees, moving the leaves gently around him. He wasn't aware of anything else around. He didn't notice the faint sound of steps behind him, slow and hesitant, stopping every few seconds. He didn't feel the presence watching from a distance, a presence that held her breath every time he wiped his tears. He cried quietly, his voice shaking. "I'm sorry I wasn't there that day. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." His words floated into the air, heavy with memories he wished he could erase. He pressed his palm against his eyes, trying not to break again, but the pain was too deep. He didn't know someone was standing behind a tree, eyes wide, hands covering her mouth as she watched him crumble. A girl thin, scared, and dressed in worn-out clothes peeked from behind the tall tree trunk. Her hair was messy, and her cheeks were marked with dried tears. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't even supposed to be alive, but she was. Her breath trembled as she saw her father on his knees. She had never seen him this broken. The last memory she had of him was the day she disappeared, a day she remembered only in blurry images and confused flashes. A woman rushing her away. A strange room, a car, and then darkness. When she woke up, nothing was the same. Someone had told her her father didn't want her. Someone had told her she should stay hidden. Someone had lied. For months, she lived with people who claimed to care about her but treated her like a burden. She never understood why she couldn't go home. She never understood why she wasn't allowed to call him. And then one night, she overheard the truth. She wasn't unwanted. She wasn't forgotten. She had been taken. She ran away the same night, barefoot, frightened, following the memory of the one place she believed he would still visit. Her steps led her here, her own grave, a grave she didn't know existed. She didn't know he had cried for her, searched for her, fainted when the authorities told him she was gone. She didn't know how much he loved her until this moment. She took a small step forward, wanting to run to him, to call his name, to hug him the way she used to. But fear stopped her. What if he didn't believe she was real? What if he thought she was a dream, a mistake, or worse? What if he didn't want her anymore? She had changed. She was thinner, quieter, and carried the weight of things she never deserved. She watched him touch the stone again, whispering another apology. He wasn't a tough businessman today. He was a father whose heart had been cracked open. Her lips trembled. She wanted to say, "Dad, I'm here." But her voice failed. He slowly stood up, brushing dust from his clothes and taking a deep breath as if preparing himself to leave. She panicked, stepping back behind the tree. She wasn't ready. Her heart raced. She needed more courage. She needed the right moment. He placed one last flower on the grave, paused, and closed his eyes. "If I could see you again," he whispered, "just once, I'd give up everything." Her breath hitched. He didn't know that he already had that chance. He didn't know she was watching him right now, her hands shaking, her eyes full of the longing she had carried for months. When he turned to walk away, she hid again, but her eyes followed him with a quiet, desperate hope. She wasn't ready to show herself. Not today. But soon, very soon, she would gather the courage to step out and whisper the one word he had dreamed of hearing again. Dad. The girl stayed behind the tree long after her father left the cemetery. She kept waiting, afraid he might suddenly return and catch her standing there like a ghost. Her heart still pounded from the moment she saw him up close. He looked tired, older, and thinner than she remembered. His eyes were different, too heavy, almost empty, like someone who had lost the part of himself that kept him alive. She hugged her arms tightly around her chest, trying to gather warmth. The clothes she wore were too light for the cold weather. They weren't even hers. The family she had been forced to live with gave her whatever old clothes they found. Nothing fit right. Nothing felt like home. When the cemetery finally became quiet, she stepped out from behind the tree. Her legs shook as she walked toward the small grave with her name on it. She stared at the stone, confused. Why was it here? Who decided she was dead? Who told her father she was gone? She knelt down slowly, touching the letters the same way her father did. A chill ran through her. It felt strange to see her own name carved in stone, like she didn't exist anymore. She whispered, "I'm alive. I'm still here." Her voice cracked. She stood again and looked in the direction her father left. She wanted to follow him, but she didn't even know where he lived anymore. The big house she remembered might still be there, but what if he moved? What if those people had told him lies too? What if he believed she left on purpose? No. She couldn't risk walking up to that house without knowing. She needed time. She needed courage. She needed to find the truth. She stepped out of the cemetery and began walking down the road with slow, uncertain steps. The wind stung her eyes, and she wiped them with the back of her hand, leaving faint streaks of dirt on her cheek. Across the city, her father sat inside his car in the cemetery parking lot, gripping the steering wheel tightly. He wasn't ready to drive. He never was after visiting her grave. It drained him every time. It pulled him back into memories he fought so hard to avoid, memories of her laughter, of the drawings she used to tape to the refrigerator, of the way she'd run to him when he came home late. He breathed deeply, trying to steady himself. His assistant had told him to rest more, to take time off work, but he couldn't. Work was the only thing that kept his mind from drowning. If he stopped, even for a moment, the silence of his empty home crushed him. He wiped his eyes before starting the car. For a brief moment, he thought he saw a small figure moving between the trees inside the cemetery, but he assumed it was just another visitor. He didn't know he had almost seen the one person he wished for every single day. The girl walked for nearly an hour before she reached a bus stop. She sat on the cold bench, her stomach aching from hunger. She hadn't eaten since the previous day. The people she escaped from didn't bother feeding her properly. She always felt like she was in the way, like she was just occupying space they didn't want to give. A bus stopped and passengers stepped off. She lowered her head, afraid someone might recognize her. She had no money, no phone, and no place to go. But she wasn't ready to go back to those people who had taken her away from her father. A woman sitting nearby noticed the girl shivering. She asked gently, "Are you waiting for someone?" The girl shook her head quickly. "No, I'm just resting." "You look cold," the woman said softly, pulling a small scarf from her bag. "Here." The girl hesitated but eventually took it. "Thank you." The woman smiled kindly before walking away, leaving the girl with a little warmth wrapped around her neck. Moments like these reminded her that the world still had gentle people. She wondered if her father still believed that. He used to tell her that kindness mattered, that even small acts could change someone's day. She missed hearing his voice. She missed being loved. She missed being safe. But she also knew she couldn't simply walk up to him yet. What if he didn't believe she was really his daughter? She looked different now, older, thinner, and carrying fear behind her eyes. She whispered to herself, "I'll find a way. I'll find him again." Back at his office, her father sat behind his large desk, staring at a picture frame he kept hidden inside a drawer. It was the last photo taken of her, a picture of her smiling with a missing tooth, holding a small stuffed animal. He touched the glass gently. "I wish I had more time with you," he murmured. He didn't know he might get that wish. Not yet, but soon, as the evening approached. The girl walked toward the city center, following familiar roads she barely remembered. Her legs ached, and she stopped under a streetlight. Rubbing her hands together for warmth. Cars passed by. People hurried home. Life moved around her as if she didn't exist. But her journey had only begun. She didn't know how long it would take. She didn't know what obstacles would appear. But one thing stayed clear in her heart. She would find her father again, and when she did, nothing in the world would keep them apart ever again. The girl spent the night in the corner of a small bus shelter. It wasn't safe or warm, but it was the only place she could rest without being chased away. She curled up with the scarf the woman had given her, letting its softness comfort her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father crying at her grave. She heard his voice trembling, calling her name the way he used to when she was scared of thunderstorms. When morning light touched her face, she woke up slowly, stiff and cold. Her stomach growled, reminding her she needed to find food. She stood, brushed off dirt from her clothes, and started walking toward the city center, hoping she could blend in with the crowds. On the other side of the city, her father was already awake. He didn't sleep much these days. He stood in his kitchen with a cup of tea, staring at his phone without really seeing anything. Every morning felt the same, quiet, empty, and heavy. He tried to ignore the silence, but it followed him everywhere. He checked the news, his emails and his messages, but nothing distracted him for long. Every morning, he ended up doing the same thing, sitting at the dining table and staring at the chair where his daughter used to sit. She used to swing her legs under the table, humming softly as she ate breakfast. He would give anything to see that again. He finally forced himself to get ready for work, telling himself that staying busy was the only way to survive. But as he opened the front door, he paused. A small paper drawing was lying on his doorstep. He bent down and picked it up. It took him only 1 second to recognize the style. His breath caught. It was a drawing of a small house and 2 figures holding hands, something his daughter used to draw every week. She had a very unique way of drawing the roof, slightly tilted to one side. No one else drew like that. His heartbeat began to race. He turned the drawing over, and on the back, written in shaky handwriting, were 4 words, "I miss you, Dad." His hand trembled. He hadn't seen that handwriting in months. He knew every curve, every stroke. He had saved hundreds of her old drawings. He compared the curves in his mind. Yes, it was hers. It had to be. He looked around frantically, stepping onto the porch, scanning the street. No one was there. A cold fear rushed through him. Was someone playing a cruel trick? Or was it possible? "Impossible," he whispered. "They told me she was gone." But the drawing felt real. The handwriting felt real. The message felt like her. He closed his eyes for a moment, overwhelmed. His heart didn't know whether to break or hope. Meanwhile, the girl watched from across the street, hidden behind a parked car. She saw him pick up the drawing. She saw his hands shake. She saw the confusion and hope fighting inside him. Her own heart fluttered. She wanted to run to him right now to tell him everything, but she didn't want to scare him. She had placed the drawing there before sunrise, hoping he would recognize it. She thought it might help him believe she was alive. She didn't expect him to react so strongly. When he stepped out onto the porch, Searching the neighborhood with wide eyes, she ducked behind the car. She wasn't ready to face him. Not yet. She needed him to be prepared first. She needed him to believe she wasn't a dream. She whispered to herself, "Please, understand it's me." She watched him hold the drawing close to his chest. She saw the way he exhaled shakily, like someone who had been drowning for a long time and just reached the surface, for the first time since running away. She felt her hope grow. Her father went inside the house quickly, locking the door behind him. He sat on the couch, staring at the drawing like it was the most precious thing he'd ever held. He knew he wasn't imagining this. He knew this wasn't just grief. Something was happening. Something real. He picked up the phone and called the one person he trusted, his private investigator, someone who had helped him search for his daughter months ago. The call connected, and he spoke in a shaky voice. "I need you to come right now. Something's happening. I think she might be alive." The investigator didn't question him. "I'm on my way." The father placed the drawing on the table and sat back, covering his face with both hands. For months, he had begged for a sign. And now something had appeared on his doorstep. He didn't know what it meant. He didn't know if he should hope or be afraid. But he knew one thing. If his daughter was alive, he would find her. He would never lose her again, outside. The girl quietly stepped away from the car, knowing she had to disappear before someone spotted her. She pulled the scarf tighter around her neck and walked down the sidewalk, her steps slow but determined. She didn't know that her drawing had already changed everything. She didn't know that her father was preparing to search for her again. She didn't know that her journey was about to take a turn she never expected. All she knew was that she had taken the first step, and now she had to find the courage to take the next one. The girl walked slowly through the busy streets, keeping her head down and her hands tucked into her sleeves. The city felt too big, too loud, too fast compared to the small space she had been trapped in for months. People rushed past her with bags, phones, and confident steps. She felt invisible again, but this time she wasn't lost. She had a purpose. She kept replaying the moment her father found the drawing. She saw the way his shoulders shook, the way he looked around, searching for her. She had wanted to run to him, hug him without thinking, but fear held her back. She needed to give him time. She needed to find a safe way to reach him. Across the city, her father waited anxiously in his living room. The private investigator, an older man with sharp eyes and a calm voice, sat across from him, examining the drawing with care. "You're certain this is your daughter's handwriting?" he asked gently. "I'm sure," her father said, voice trembling. "I taught her how to draw roofs like that. No one knows this style." "It's hers." The investigator nodded thoughtfully. "Then she may be alive. And she may be trying to contact you." Her father swallowed hard. He didn't want to believe in false hope, but for the first time in months, something inside him felt alive again. Why would she leave the drawing here? The investigator asked. "Maybe she's scared," he whispered. "Maybe she doesn't know how to come home." The investigator leaned forward. "Children who go missing often don't return directly. They think the world changed while they were gone. They feel they have to approach slowly." Her father closed his eyes, imagining her out there alone, cold, hungry, and afraid. The thought made his chest tighten painfully. "We need to find her," he said firmly. "We will," the investigator promised. "But first we need clues. Someone must have helped her place this drawing. Or she may be nearby." Her father stood. "I'll search the neighborhood." "It's better if we work carefully," the investigator said. "If she's watching the house, she will come again." Her father paused, heart pounding. Watching the house. Could she be that close? Was she outside, afraid to knock? His breath shook at the thought. The girl had wandered into a small grocery store, drawn by the warm air and the smell of bread. She didn't have money, so she stayed near the shelves, pretending to browse while trying to hide her hunger. The store clerk glanced at her but didn't say anything. She kept her distance, afraid of causing trouble. Near the back of the store, she saw a small bulletin board pinned with flyers. Her eyes widened when she saw an old photo of her father had used months ago when searching for her. The picture showed her smiling brightly, holding a small stuffed dog. Her breath caught. She reached out and touched the photo softly. Below it, the words "missing child" were still printed clearly. Her father had never taken it down. Her throat tightened. He had never stopped looking for her. Before she could think, her legs moved on their own, and she stepped away from the board, wiping tears from her eyes. She didn't want anyone to see her crying. She slipped out of the store quietly and stood outside, breathing in the cold air to calm herself. She didn't know where to go next. She needed to stay close to him, but not too close. She didn't want to be taken away again. Back at the house, her father stepped outside and looked down both sides of the street. He walked slowly, searching the corners, checking behind bushes, scanning the sidewalk for even the smallest sign. Every sound made him turn. Every shadow made him hope. He stopped near the gate and whispered, "If you're out there, please come home. I'm here." I never stopped waiting. His voice cracked, and he pressed a hand to his forehead. He had no idea that she was less than a mile away, walking with small, tired steps, holding the scarf tightly around her neck. As the sun began to set, the girl sat on a bench near a quiet park. She watched children play, their laughs filling the air. A little girl held her mother's hand, pulling her toward the swings. The sight made her chest ache gently. She remembered swinging in their old backyard while her father pushed her higher and higher, pretending the sky was hers to touch. She remembered him saying, "You can go anywhere. You can be anything." She whispered softly, "I just want to go home." She wasn't sure how long she sat there before she noticed something strange, a black car creeping slowly along the edge of the park. The same black car she had seen in her nightmares. The same car the people used when they took her months ago. Her heartbeat jumped. Her breath froze. She slid quietly off the bench and hid behind a large tree. The car moved slowly, as if searching. Her hands shook. She couldn't let them find her again. Not now. Not when she was so close to her father. She pressed her back against the tree trunk, eyes wide, lips trembling. She didn't know that this moment, this fear, would push her to make a choice she had been delaying. A choice that would force her to step out of hiding. A choice that would finally bring her face to face with the man who never stopped loving her. The girl stayed hidden behind the tree, barely breathing as the black car rolled past the park. She pressed her palms against the rough bark, praying they wouldn't see her. Her heart pounded so loudly she felt sure someone could hear it. She watched the car crawl by, its windows dark, its speed too slow to be normal. It felt like a shadow from her past returning to pull her back. But then, after a long, tense moment, the car continued down the road and turned the corner. She waited until she couldn't hear the engine anymore before stepping away from the tree, knees trembling. She knew she couldn't keep running like this. She needed help. She needed safety. And she needed her father. She repeated the words silently. I have to go to him. Even if she was scared. Even if she wasn't ready. Even if she looked different now. She started walking toward his neighborhood, the sky turning soft shades of orange and pink above her. Her small figure moved through the streets slowly, but with determination. Every step felt heavy but important, like she was finally choosing her own future. At home, her father stood at the window, the drawing still on the table behind him. He hadn't left the house since morning. Something inside him kept whispering that he needed to stay close, like she was near, watching, waiting. The private investigator had left to gather information, but her father remained restless. Every sound outside made him turn his head. Every car that passed made him step closer to the window, he whispered to himself. If you're alive, if you're really out there, come home, please. His voice broke. He wiped his eyes, frustrated by his own helplessness. He had wealth, power, connections, but none of it meant anything if he couldn't bring his daughter back. He went to the front door, opened it, and stepped outside. The cool evening breeze brushed across his face. He closed his eyes and whispered her name into the wind, hoping somehow, some way, she would hear him. She did. The girl was only 2 streets away, when she heard a faint echo, her father's voice drifting through the air. It wasn't loud, but she knew the sound. She would know that voice anywhere. Her breath caught. Her steps slowed. She looked up toward the houses, her heart pulling her forward. For a moment, doubt returned. What if he didn't recognize her? What if he thought she was an imposter? What if he blamed her for leaving? But then she remembered the way he cried in her grave. She remembered how he held her drawing like it was treasure. She remembered seeing love in his eyes, even from a distance. And she kept walking. Her small feet carried her down the sidewalk until she reached the end of his street. The lights from the houses glowed softly as the sky darkened. She scanned each yard carefully until she saw him standing outside his home, looking toward the sky. Her breath trembled. There he was, her father, not in her memories, not in her dreams, but real, standing just a few steps away. She took 1 step, then another. Her father turned slightly, sensing something behind him. He looked toward the gate, his heart suddenly pounding. For a moment, he saw only a small shadow. But then that shadow stepped into the light. His breath froze. The world around him went silent. A thin girl with messy hair, tired eyes, and trembling hands stood at the edge of his driveway. Her clothes were old, her face pale, her expression filled with fear and longing. But the moment he saw her, eyes the same eyes he'd tucked into bed for years, his knees almost gave out. He whispered her name. Her eyes flooded with tears. She whispered softly, "Dad, it's me." The sound hit him like lightning. He didn't think. He ran. He rushed toward her with all the strength he had left, afraid she might disappear if he blinked. She took 1 shaky step forward, then another. And suddenly he was right in front of her, for a split second. They just stared at each other. Then she collapsed into his arms. He caught her instantly, pulling her tightly against his chest. She clung to him like she had been holding her breath for months. His arms shook around her as he whispered, "You're alive. You're really alive." She buried her face in his coat, crying softly. "I tried to come back. I was scared." "You're safe now," he whispered, pressing his cheek against her hair. "No one will ever take you away from me again." He held her like he never wanted to let go. Neighbors walked past without understanding the miracle happening in front of them. Cars drove by unaware that a father had just been given the moment he prayed for every day. The girl finally pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. "I thought you wouldn't want me anymore." Her father's heart broke at the words. He cupped her face gently. "I never stopped wanting you. I never stopped looking for you. You're my daughter. Nothing will ever change that." A small, trembling smile appeared on her lips, the first real smile she'd had in months. He lifted her into his arms, light as air, and carried her inside, for the first time in a long time. The house felt alive again, warm, full of hope. As he closed the door behind them, he whispered 1 final promise, "You're home now." And she finally felt it. She was.